Thank you, and welcome to the Briefcase, where we talk all things business, investing, and real estate. Today, we're going to be going into the most underrated wealth machine in real estate, triplexes. Now let's get into it. There's a strange pattern in the real estate world that most people either stay stuck buying single-family homes, or they jump straight into chasing apartment complexes that they're not ready for. And in between those two worlds is a quiet, overlooked, almost ignored world. It sits one of the most powerful investment vehicles you can buy. This is the triplex. There's 3 units, 1 property, 3 income streams, attached to a loan that still qualifies like residential. It's not flashy. It's not talked about nearly enough. And that's exactly why it works. Today, we're doing a full deep dive into triplexes, how they make money, how they scale, how they're financed, and why they might be one of the smartest ways to build a real estate wealth without overcomplicating your life. And more importantly, we're going to break down what most people get completely wrong about them. Now let's go. What is a triplex? At its core, a triplex is exactly what it sounds like. 1 property, divided into 3 separate living units. Each unit typically has its own kitchen, its own bathroom, and separate entrances, usually. Think of it as 3 apartments under 1 roof or 1 parcel. Now here's where things get interesting. From a financing standpoint, triplexes fall into 1 to 4 unit residential category, which means you get to use residential loans, lower down payments, better interest rates, and easier qualification compared to commercial deals. That alone changes the game, because once you hit 5 units, everything shifts into commercial underwriting. So the triplex sits in a very specific and very powerful position. It behaves like a small apartment building, but it's treated like a house by lenders. That's not just convenient, that's leverage. The in-between advantage for triplexes. Triplexes live in what I like to call the in-between advantage zone. Too big for most homeowners, but too small for institutional investors. And that creates opportunity, because institutional money, hedge funds, REITs, large operators, they don't care about triplexes. That's not enough scale. So you're not competing with billion-dollar capital. And at the same time, most everyday buyers are intimidated by anything that isn't a single-family home, which leaves a gap in the market. And in real estate, gaps are where profits live. Triplexes often sit longer on the market, have less aggressive bidding wars, and often offer more negotiation flexibility. And yet, they produce significantly more income than a single-family property. It's one of the rare cases where complexity filters out competition. House hacking a triplex. Now let's talk about one of the most powerful strategies in real estate, house hacking. With a triplex, this becomes almost unfair. Here's the model. You live in 1 unit. You rent out the other 2. Those 2 tenants, they're not just paying rent. They're covering your mortgage, your taxes, and your insurance. And in many cases, your entire cost of living, which means you're effectively living for free, or better, getting paid to live there. Let's say each unit rents $1,200. You rent out those 2 units, that's $2,400 a month. If your total mortgage payment is around $2,200, you're already in positive territory, and you're building equity at the same time. That's the part people underestimate. You're not just reducing expenses, you're accelerating your wealth. Financing explained for triplexes. This is where triplexes quietly outperform most investments, because financing determines everything. Since triplexes are considered residential, you can qualify for FHA loans as low as 3.5% down, and conventional loans 5 to 15% down if owner occupied. Now let's pause there. 3.5% down on a 3-unit income producing property? That's not normal in most asset classes. Now compare that to commercial real estate, 20, 30% down, higher interest rates, and income-based underwriting. This is a completely different game. With a triplex, especially owner-occupied, the lender may even consider projected rental income to help you qualify. So instead of your income limiting you, your property starts helping you qualify for itself. That's a subtle shift, but it's massive. Cash flow breakdown for triplexes. Let's run a clean example. Your purchase price, $450,000. Your down payment, 5%, $22,500. The loan, $427,500. Monthly payment, approximately $2,800. Now let's say each unit rents for $1,300. Your total rent income is $3,900 a month. Now subtract mortgage, $2,800, maintenance, $300, vacancy reserve, $200, and miscellaneous, $200. You're left with roughly $400 a month in cash flow. That's not life-changing. Yet, you're still getting money in your pocket each month. And remember, you only put $22,500 down. That's where return on investment becomes interesting, because you're not just earning cash flow, you're also gaining equity paydown, appreciation, and tax advantages, all on a relatively small initial investment. Expense structure and hidden costs of triplexes. Here's where most new investors get blindsided. Triplexes are not just 3 rents, they are also 3 tenants, 3 sets of problems, and 3 times the management complexity. Also, there are expenses that might sneak up on you, like higher maintenance frequency, turnover costs, utility management, and insurance premiums. And here's the big one: tenant quality variance. In single-family home, you're dealing with 1 tenant. In a triplex, 1 bad tenant doesn't just affect your income, it affects the entire ecosystem of the property. Noise complaints, shared spaces, and parking issues. So tenant screening becomes a non-negotiable. Tenant strategy for triplexes. This is where triplexes investing becomes more of an art than a formula. You're not just filling units, you're building a micro community. Ideally, you want stable, long-term tenants, compatible lifestyles, and minimal conflict potential. For example, renting all units to short-term tenants, high turnover, and renting to 3 completely different lifestyles, potential friction. Some investors intentionally target similar demographics, keep consistent lease structures, and set very clear expectations up front, because your job isn't just collecting rent, it's maintaining harmony, which sounds soft until you've dealt with neighbor disputes at 2 a.m. Appreciation versus cash flow in triplexes. There's a constant debate in real estate. Do you invest for appreciation or cash flow? Triplexes sit right in the middle. They typically offer better cash flow than single-family homes and better appreciation potential than large multifamily. Why? Because they're influenced by both residential market demand and income performance. But here's the nuance. Triplex value is often still heavily tied to comparable sales, not just income. So improving the property, renovations, better tenants, and increased rents can impact value, but not as aggressively as larger commercial deals. Still, that hybrid nature makes triplexes incredibly stable. Tax advantages for a triplex. Now let's think like a CPA for a second. Triplexes unlock several key tax benefits, like depreciation. This is a non-cash expense that reduces taxable income. Next, expense write-offs like repairs, management, and insurance. And finally, mortgage interest deductions. And if you're living in one unit, you may also qualify for primary residence capital gains exclusions under certain conditions, which means you're stacking tax efficiency, cash flow, and equity growth all in one asset. That's rare. Biggest mistakes to avoid with triplexes. Let's clean this up with reality. Mistake number 1, underestimating management. Triplexes are not passive at all. Mistake number 2, overestimating rent. Always underwrite conservatively. Mistake number 3, ignoring tenant dynamics. This isn't just math, it's people. Mistake number 4, poor financing decisions. The loan structure can make or break your returns. And finally, number 5, buying in the wrong location. Triplexes amplify both good and bad markets. Quick fun fact about triplexes that most people often miss. Did you know that in a lot of markets, a triplex can actually cost less per unit than a duplex, and sometimes even a single family home? Yeah, sounds backwards, right? But here's why. Most regular home buyers are scared of anything with more than 2 units. It feels complicated and more investory. So demand drops, which means you can sneak in and get a better deal. And here's the kicker. Lenders often still treat triplexes as residential properties, meaning you can use low down payment loans like FHA or conventional while living in one unit and have the other 2 units basically cover your rent and mortgage. So while everyone else is fighting over overpriced single-family homes, you could be living for free or even getting paid to live. That's why triplexes are low-key one of the most underrated wealth-building tools in real estate. Thank you for sticking with the briefcase today. If you found any of those facts interesting, confusing, or insightful about triplexes, please leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe. Now remember, stay smart.